Have you ever felt like you were at the end of a long journey, ready to finally rest, but fate had one last test for you? Imagine a trucker, Sam, driving on his last trip before retirement. He just wanted peace, but found smoke, twisted metal, and an impossible sound: a baby's cry. Today, we'll tell the story of how one man's last turn became another's first breath of life, and how an act of heroism filled the void he didn't even know he had. Stay with me to discover how a roadside rescue saved 2 lives that day. And now, let's hit the road with Sam and begin this incredible story. But before we shift gears, do me a favor and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We have a whole train of stories like this coming, and I don't want you to be left behind in the next post.e.I pesol. Do. Road Revelations Hoj, EU Quero te contra uma historia. Tu vai tocar o su coracal, diamjeto que voca nem imagina. Pensa. Comigo sabe aquel silencio especial. Que eso existe dentro de camino gigante gan. Antes do sol nascer quando, o mundo ainda está meio sonolento. Poi pra caminhanero chamado Sam Jones de 62 anos, como Monte de Milhas. Redadas na alma aquel silencio, era a coisa mais linda que ele podia ouvir. A gente comica nosso vídeo, bem aqui. Atila vai te mostrar o sol nascendo devagarzinho, pintando o sul da Laranha e Roxolá. Nas montanhas cascade, visual de tirar o falago. Mas essa não era eso mais uma manhã para ele, não era a última. Sim voca ouviu certo a última viagem. A última entrega, antes da aposentadoria dos caminos e da vida na estrada. Da imolhada de Porto na cabin. Não é caminho novino, folha supermoderno. E mais que isso e a casa dele longe de casa. Voca vai ver uma caneca de café. Meio gasta que, desmeller vova do mundo, crescente de muitos anos atrás. E bem ali no painel com uma fita amarelada, a gente vi uma foto antiga da Mary, a esposa dele, que já não estava mais aqui. Mas o sorriso dela ainda brilhava para ele todo santo dia. Sam sempre passava o dedo na foto dela, ritual que ele nunca perdia. 40 anos e tempo em 40 anos vendo a América passar por esse para-brisa. Ele veio de tudo, de ponta a ponta do país. Ele levou de tudo nas costas do caminho, desde pecas para Avaio e dos brinquedos que chegaram no Natal. Ele veio cidades cresceram, e estradas antigas sumiram do mapa. Essa vida na estrada foi tudo para ele conhecer desde que era eso garoto sonador. Mas agora era diferente. Era de verdade o final. Esta era a viagem que encerrava tudo a última carga antes de pender as chaves. A aposentadoria não era mais. Eso sonho distante estava a poucos quilômetros de distância. Ele podia quase sentir o cairo da grama fresquina de seu quintal em Boise, Idaho. Podia imaginar a vara de pescar nas suas mãos pronta para mais dia tranquilo no lago. Silencio a rotina que ele, tanto deseava, era tudo que ele queria. Essa história deveria ser simples. História de herói caminhanero americano voltando para casa. Sem grandes emoções reviravoltas malucas. S.O. homem o seu caminho e estrada aberta pela última vez. Mas a estrada, meu amigo, a estrada tem jeito próprio de te surpreender. Ela te lembra que, por mais que voca planejem tudo, esta sabe o seu controle. Sam estava pensando no passado na Mary, nas dias comos que o esperavam. Mal sabia ele que bem ali na próxima curva o seu futuro. Ia gritar por ele em meio a fumaça, e muito metal amassado. So let's get to know the man behind the wheel of this story a little better. Because to understand what happens next, you need to understand who Sam Jones really is. He wasn't just another truck driver. He was a living, breathing piece of American history on 16 wheels. Imagine this: he's cruising down the highway, and he grabs his radio mic. The static crackles to life, and you hear him say, "Big Rick you on this channel." From the speaker, a deep, gravelly voice replies, "I'm always here for you, oh Lel Timer." You finally doing it. This the last one. Sam lets out a little laugh, a sound full of relief and a little bit of sadness. This is it, Ricky. The last haul. I can already smell my wife's roses and the lake water. Big Rick chuckles and says, "Well, I'll believe it when I see it. Don't go getting soft on us out here. That little conversation tells you everything." Sam wasn't a man of many words, but his actions spoke volumes. For 40 years, this truck was his office, his dining room, and his bedroom. He raised 2 kids from a distance, sending money home and calling from truck stops in places like Omaha and Flagstaff. He'd missed birthdays and school plays more than he could count. He and Mary had always planned their perfect retirement. A small house, a boat for fishing, and just time. Time to make up for all the years he spent chasing the white lines on the asphalt. But life had other plans, and Mary had been gone for 5 years now. So this retirement, it wasn't just for him. It was for her too. It was a promise he had made to her a long time ago. He was finally going to live the quiet life they both dreamed of. He was a good man, a man of simple needs. He didn't want a mansion or a fancy car. He just wanted to fix the squeaky step on his front porch. He wanted to teach his grandkids how to fish. He wanted to sit and watch the sunset without having to check his watch or his logbook. He was the kind of American trucker that holds this country together, the quiet hero that nobody sees but everyone depends on. He had dedicated his entire life to the road. It gave him a purpose. It paid his bills, but it also took so much. And now it was finally time to collect his reward. He smiled as he pictured his quiet little house in Boise. He was so close, so incredibly close to the finish line. He took a deep breath, ready for the peace that was just over the next hill. He had no way of knowing that around the very next bend, the road was preparing to cash in on one final terrible debt. And just like that, the dream of peace vanished. He was coming around a long sweeping curve on a mountain pass in the heart of the Oregon wilderness, a road he knew like the back of his hand. And that's when he saw it. It started with a wisp of black smoke curling up into the clear blue sky. A bad sign. Always a bad sign. Sam's heart skipped a beat. His foot automatically eased off the accelerator. As he rounded the bend, the full picture hit him like a physical blow. The beautiful blue sky had a black scar on it, and the peaceful mountain air was thick with the sickeningly sweet smell of gasoline and burning rubber. The scene was pure chaos. It was a blue family sedan, or what was left of it. The car was upside down, a crumpled mess of metal and glass, pushed up against the ancient rocks of the mountainside. Debris was scattered everywhere across both lanes of the highway. It was like a monster had taken a bite out of the beautiful day. Sam brought his huge truck to a slow stop a safe distance away. The hiss of the air brakes was the loudest sound in the world. And then nothing. The silence. That's what hit him the hardest. In all his years on the road, he had seen accidents before, but there were always sounds. The scream of sirens, the shouts of people, the groan of injured metal. But here there was only the wind whistling through the pine trees and the quiet crackle of the dying fire from the car's engine. It was a deafening silence, a silence that felt wrong, a silence that screamed of finality. His heart, which was just beating with happy thoughts of fishing, was now a heavy stone in his chest. He slowly unbuckled his seatbelt, his movements stiff. He opened the heavy door of his cab, and the sound echoed in the quiet valley. He stepped down onto the asphalt his worn leather boots crunching on stray bits of glass dot. He stood there for a long moment, just a man in a flannel shirt and jeans staring at the wreckage. All thoughts of retirement, of fishing, of his quiet house in Boise were gone. They were blown away like dust in the wind. He was no longer a man driving toward retirement. In that split second, he was just a man, a first responder, the only person for miles who could do anything. This was the dark side of the road he knew so well, the side that every American trucker prays they never have to see. He took a deep breath, his mind racing. He had to call for help. He reached for his radio on his belt, his hand shaking just a little. His training, his instinct, everything told him to call it in. But just as his fingers brushed against the cold plastic mic, something made him freeze. It was a sound that had no business being there. His hand froze just inches from the radio. He stood perfectly still, straining to listen over the pounding in his own ears. What was that? It was so faint, he almost thought he had imagined it. It sounded like a tiny whimper, a little cry. Was it just the wind whistling through a broken piece of the car? Was it a wounded animal somewhere in the trees? His logical mind, the mind of a seasoned truck driver, told him it was impossible. He looked at the mangled car. The impact was horrific. No one could have survived that. The silence that followed the crash told him that story. But then he heard it again, a little clearer this time. It was a soft, high-pitched sound. It was unmistakably a cry, a human cry. It was a sound of pure, innocent life in a place that was filled with so much death. A shiver went down Sam's spine. It wasn't a shiver of fear. It was a jolt of pure adrenaline, a surge of something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. His hand dropped from the radio. The call for help could wait. Right. Now something else was more important. Every second mattered. He started walking toward the wreck, his steps slow and deliberate. He had to be careful. There was glass everywhere, sharp, twisted metal that could cut you to the bone. The smell of gasoline was stronger here, and he knew the car could catch fire again at any moment, but he didn't care. That tiny sound was a magnet pulling him forward. He called out in a voice that was surprisingly steady. "Hello, is anyone there?" He didn't expect an answer, and he didn't get one. Only that same faint cry in response, like a little echo. He got closer to the upside-down sedan. He peered through a shattered window into the dark interior of the car. He could see airbags deployed like ghostly white pillows. It was a scene of utter devastation. And yet that sound was coming from inside. How could that be? He moved around to the back of the car, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He had to find the source of that sound. A back passenger door was jammed shut, but the window was completely gone. He carefully leaned in, trying to see through the darkness and the wreckage. This is one of those true stories you hear about, but never believe could happen to you. A moment that splits your life into two parts, before and after. For this American trucker, the man who just wanted to go home and fish the after was about to begin. He squinted, his eyes adjusting to the dim light, and then he saw it. A flash of pink. A tiny foot kicking in the air. His breath caught in his throat. It was a baby. Tucked away in the back, a tiny little thing still strapped securely into a car seat that was now hanging upside down. It was a miracle. A complete and unbelievable miracle. The car seat had done its job, perfectly protecting this small life from the chaos and destruction all around it. The baby wasn't crying loudly, now just making those soft little whimpers. It was as if it knew it was safe somehow. Sam's mind went into overdrive. He had to get the baby out. He carefully reached into the car, his big calloused hands moving with a gentleness he didn't know he possessed. He fumbled with the straps of the car seat, his fingers feeling clumsy and huge. He whispered softly, "It's okay, little one. I'm here. I've got you. It was a promise. A promise from a total stranger, a hero trucker on the side of a lonely highway. Finally, he managed to unbuckle the harness. He gently lifted the baby out of the car seat. It was a little girl with a tuft of blonde hair and big blue eyes that were looking right at him, filled with a mixture of fear and curiosity. She couldn't have been more than a year old. He cradled her against his chest, his flannel shirt, a soft warm blanket for her. He checked her for injuries, but amazingly, she seemed to be completely unharmed, not a scratch on her. It was a truly life-changing moment. 1 second he was a retiring truck driver, thinking about his past. The next he was holding the future in his arms. The immense sadness for the parents he assumed were lost was mixed with an overwhelming sense of relief and wonder. He held the baby tight and backed away from the wrecked car. He stood there on the side of the road with the quiet little girl in his arms. The vastness of the mountains surrounded them. The smoking car seemed like something from another world. In that moment, he wasn't Sam Jones, the truck driver. He was a protector, a guardian. He took off his worn denim jacket and wrapped it around the baby, creating a warm little cocoon for her. He looked down at her tiny face, and she looked back up. At him, her crying finally stopping. A single tear rolled down Sam's weathered cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness. It was a tear of all of gratitude, of a profound emotional connection to this little soul he had just saved. This was the baby rescue that would redefine his life. The hero was born not in a cape or a uniform, but in a flannel shirt on the side of a forgotten highway. He finally remembered his radio. He had to call for help now, not just for the accident, but for her. He had to get her to safety. That's when he heard the faint sound of sirens in the distance. Help was on the way. Sirens grew louder and louder, bouncing off the canyon walls until a fire truck, an ambulance, and a police car came screeching to a halt. The scene instantly transformed from a quiet, lonely place into a whirlwind of organized chaos. Firefighters rushed to the smoking car with hoses ready. Police officers started securing the area. And then a paramedic, a young woman with kind, determined eyes, rushed over to Sam. She saw the baby in his arms, and her expression soft. "Sir, is the baby okay?" Sam just nodded, his throat suddenly tight with emotion. He couldn't find the words. The young paramedic gently reached out for the baby. "Let me take a look at her. We need to get her to the hospital right away." And this is where the story takes a turn. This is the handoff. The moment the hero trucker has to let go. He hesitated for just a second. It was a strange feeling. He had only known this little girl for a few minutes, but a powerful bond had already formed between them. He felt this overwhelming need to protect her, to make sure she was okay. But he knew she was in good hands now. He carefully transferred the baby from his arms into the paramedics. As she took the baby, the little girl's tiny hand brushed against Sam's rough fingers. It was a small gesture, but it felt like a jolt of electricity. The paramedic quickly checked the baby over and then rushed her to the back of the ambulance. Sam just stood there watching them go, feeling suddenly empty and useless. His jacket, which had been a warm cocoon for the baby, now felt cold and hollow in his hands. A police officer, a tall man with a calm voice, came over to him. "Sir, can I get your name?" "Did you see what happened?" Sam gave his statement, his voice quiet and distant. He told the officer everything he saw. The officer wrote it all down in his notepad, calling him a hero. But Sam didn't feel like a hero. He just felt like a man who had been in the right place at the right time. Or maybe the wrong place. He watched as the ambulance doors closed and it pulled away, its lights flashing, but its siren silent now. He watched it disappear down the highway, carrying away the little miracle he had found. His part in this emotional rescue story was over. He had done his job. He was just a witness now, an outsider looking in. The police officer told him he was free to go, that they would contact him if they needed anything else. Sam just nodded and slowly walked back to his big silent truck. The engine was still running a low rumble in the now busy scene. He climbed back into the cab, the familiar world that now felt completely alien to him. He was supposed to be driving toward his retirement, but it felt like he was leaving a part of himself behind on that lonely stretch of highway. It's hair-raising, isn't it? That moment when everything changes. And I have to ask you, have you ever heard a true story like this? Maybe you know a trucker, a friend, a relative who has experienced something incredible like this on the road. Tell me in the comments. I read every single one because these are the stories that truly connect us. Sam drove the last few hundred miles home in a daze. The world outside his windshield seemed blurry and unimportant. When he finally pulled into his driveway in Boise and turned off the engine for the last time, there was no feeling of celebration. There was just a profound quietness. Days turned into a week. He tried to settle into his new life. He unpacked his boxes. He worked in his garden, but his mind was always somewhere else. It was back on that mountain road. He kept thinking about the little girl with the big blue eyes. Was she okay? Did she have a family to go to? He didn't know her name. He didn't know anything about her. He was just a ghost in her story. And then one evening, as he was watching the local news, something caught his eye. It was a picture of the crash site. His truck was visible in the background, a silent giant watching over the scene. The news anchor's voice filled the room. The story of a miracle baby found alive after a tragic accident that claimed the lives of her parents has captured the heart of the nation. A baby identified as Lily is safe and in good condition. But the identity of the truck driver, the first person on the scene who pulled her from the wreckage, remains a mystery. And there it was. This is where the story gets bigger than just one man. It became a public story. The hero trucker was now a headline. We'll show you some newspaper clippings on the screen now. You'll see headlines like "Hero Trucker Saves Miracle," "Baby or Mystery Guardian Angel of the Highway." The story went viral. Everyone was talking about this anonymous hero. People were inspired. It was a feel-good story, a bright light in a world that often feels dark. It was a testament to the quiet courage of ordinary people. Sam sat there on his old armchair watching all of this unfold. It felt surreal. They were talking about him, but it felt like they were talking about a character in a movie. He never wanted any attention. He was a private man. He had just done what anyone would have done in that situation. He didn't think of himself as a hero, but the world needed a hero. The world needed to believe in good people. The news story continued saying that the baby's grandparents had been located and were on their way to be with her. That was a relief for Sam. A huge weight lifted off his shoulders. She had a family. She would be loved. He thought that was the end of it. He could finally let it go and get on with his quiet life. He had no idea that these very news stories, these headlines about the anonymous hero, had just created a map. A map that was leading right to his front door. He thought his connection to Lily was over, but it was really just about to begin. So the headlines faded and the news cycle moved on. Life for Sam fell into a routine, a quiet, lonely routine. This is the second conflict in our story. It's not a car crash or a dramatic rescue. It's a quiet battle fought in the heart of a good man. He had everything he thought he ever wanted. He had his house, his freedom, no more deadlines, no more long nights on the road. He woke up in his own bed every morning. He could do whatever he wanted. He tried to enjoy it. He really did. He bought a new fishing rod and went down to the Snake River, just like he had always planned. He sat there for hours watching the water flow by, but there was no joy in it. The silence he had craved for 40 years, now felt like a heavy blanket suffocating him. It was an emptiness. A void. The house was too quiet. He would find himself listening for the familiar rumble of his truck's engine or the crackle of the CB radio, but there was nothing. He would walk through the rooms of his small house, the house he and Mary had picked out together. It was filled with memories, but now it also felt hollow. He realized something profound. For his entire adult life, the road had been his constant companion. It was demanding, and it was dangerous, but it was always there. It gave him a rhythm, a purpose. Every day he had a destination, a mission to complete. Now his only mission was to get through the day. This inspirational story had a hero, but what does a hero do when the adventure is over? Who is Sam Jones without his truck? He was just a lonely old man in a quiet house. He would often sit in his armchair and just stare out the window at the street. He'd watch the cars go by, and he'd wonder where they were all going. He'd see families laughing and kids playing, and he'd feel a pang of loneliness, so sharp it was like a physical pain. He had spent his life on the move, watching the world from behind a pane of glass. And now that he had finally stopped, it felt like the world was moving on without him. He had found more purpose, more life in those few frantic minutes on that mountain road than he had in the weeks of his peaceful retirement. He had saved a life, but he was starting to feel like he was losing his own. The road had taken so much from him over the years, but it had also given him an identity. And now that identity was gone, he was lost. And he had no map to find his way back. He didn't know it yet, but the map was on its way to him. And it was about to arrive with a gentle knock on his front door. Well, we're getting to the most exciting part of this whole journey. But wait a second. If Sam's story has touched you so far, do something for me and hit that thumbs up button. It's like giving our truck a little fuel, letting YouTube know these are the stories people want to see. It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us keep these stories on the road. Thanks for that. Now, let's move on. That happened on a sunny Tuesday afternoon. Sam was sitting in his usual spot in the armchair, just watching the world go by when he heard it. A soft knock on his front door. He wasn't expecting anyone. His kids lived out of state, and his friends knew to call first. He slowly got up, his joints aching a little, and walked to the door. He looked through the peephole, and his heart stopped. Standing on his porch was an older couple, a man and a woman with kind, worried faces. And the woman was holding a baby carrier. Sam's hand trembled as he reached for the doorknob. He opened the door, and the man spoke, his voice soft and full of emotion. "Are you Samuel Jones?" Sam just nodded, unable to speak. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "We're Lily's grandparents," she said, her voice breaking. "We've been looking for you. This is the moment." The emotional climax of our entire story. They had pieced it all together. A friend of a friend who worked for the trucking company had seen the news story and recognized the truck. It took some time, but they finally found him. They didn't come to his door with a check or a big reward. They brought him something so much more valuable. They brought him Lily. The grandmother gently lifted the baby out of the carrier. Lily was wearing a little yellow dress, and her blonde hair was now a little longer. She looked right at Sam with those same big blue eyes he remembered so clearly. The grandmother stepped forward. "We wanted to thank you," she said. "You saved our whole world. We can never repay you, but we wanted you to see her. We wanted you to know that she's okay because of you." Sam looked from the grandparents' tear-streaked faces down to the beautiful, healthy baby. He felt a wave of emotion, so powerful it almost knocked him off his feet. The grandmother then did something incredible. She held Lily out to him. "Would you like to hold her?" she asked. Sam's arms came up automatically. He took the little girl into his arms, and it felt like coming home. It felt like every mile he had ever driven, every lonely night he had ever spent on the road, had led him to this one perfect moment. He held her close, and this time he didn't try to hide his tears. They streamed freely down his face. This was the heartwarming moment we promised, the true reward. It wasn't money or fame. It was this connection, this feeling of pure, unselfish love. He looked at the baby's grandparents, and he saw not just gratitude in their eyes, but a question, an unspoken invitation. They didn't just come to say thank you. They came to build a bridge between a lonely old hero and the new life he had saved. That knock on the door wasn't an ending. It was the real beginning. This is the resolution, the final heartwarming chapter of our story. That one visit turned into many more. Soon Sam's quiet house wasn't so quiet anymore. It was filled with the happy sounds of a baby's laughter. Lily's grandparents lived just a town over, and they made Sam a part of their family. He wasn't the anonymous hero anymore. He was Uncle Sam, or as Lily would eventually call him, Grandpa Sam. We'll show you a montage of pictures now. You'll see Sam pushing Lily on a swing set in his backyard. You'll see him at her first birthday party, wearing a funny party hat and holding a brightly colored balloon. You'll see him teaching a little toddler how to hold a tiny fishing rod by the lake, the very same lake where he once felt so alone that the emptiness he had felt was gone. It was replaced with love, with purpose, with a new reason to get up in the morning. He wasn't just fixing his porch for himself anymore. He was making it safe for a little girl to run and play on. The silence in his house was now filled with stories and songs and the pitter-patter of tiny feet. He had spent 40 years on the road, believing that his life's work was about delivering cargo from one place to another. But his greatest delivery, his most important journey, happened on his very last day. He didn't just save a life. That little girl, Lily, she saved him too. She saved him from the crushing loneliness of a retirement he thought he wanted. She gave him a second chance at being a grandpa, a second chance at having a family close by. Sam Jones, the hero truck driver, thought he was driving toward the end of his story. He was so wrong. He was just starting the most beautiful and important chapter of all. His last trip wasn't an ending. It was a detour to a destination he never knew he was looking for. The road had taken a lot from him over the decades. It took his time, it took his youth, it took him away from his family. But in the end, on that one fateful day, it gave him everything back and more. It gave him a new family, a new purpose, and a new reason to believe in miracles. So the next time you see a lone truck driver rolling down the highway, remember Sam. Remember that inside that cab might be a quiet hero, a guardian angel on 16 wheels. Because, as we always say here on Road Revelations, every mile has a story. This was one of them. Thank you so much for traveling with us on Sam's story. If you want to secure your spot in the booth for the next Roadside Revelation, hit that subscribe button. We still have many miles to travel together. Until the next video, drive safely and keep your eyes open for the stories unfolding around you.